Hello, my name is Brad Hughes. I will be the advisor on your 401k plan. If we think about reasons why you should participate in the Tejas Equipment 401k plan, it is an easy process. So once you are enrolled, contributions are made with each and every pay period. Your plan also does offer automatic enrollment. So if you do nothing, you will be enrolled at 1% pre-tax. You do have the ability to opt out of that within 90 days of your eligibility. If you want to enroll or contribute an amount greater than 1%, you can go in and select a higher amount if you choose to. Your plan also has an employer match. There's some income tax benefits built into 401k plans. Any growth within the plan grows compounded. You can access your funds through loans. And then probably most importantly, Social Security alone will not be enough for most people to retire on. We think about Social Security, it replaces about 27% of your income today. Any additional amount above and beyond that would need to come from somewhere such as a pension, which very few people have access to, retirement savings, maybe part-time work, something of that nature. We think about retirement savings, a 401k plan tends to be the easiest and in most cases, most effective way to save for retirement. Uh, so that is one reason to consider. If we think about financial stress right now that people are going through, 2/3 are struggling to meet household expenses. More than half have had to postpone retirement. And right now, 1 in 4 have less than $1,000 saved for retirement. So hopefully having access to a plan such as this improves your financial situation, puts you in a situation where you have less stress regarding finances and things of that nature. Eligibility, once you have worked for at least 6 months and are 21 years of age, you have the ability to enter the plan. Again, your plan has auto enrollment, so if you do nothing, you will be auto enrolled at that 1%. If you do want to enroll at a higher percentage or opt out, you will log on to the Transamerica site and make those changes accordingly. The other great news is your employer does have a match. So they do match 100% of the first 3% that you contribute and 50% of the next 2%. So as an example, if you were to contribute 1, 2, or 3%, they'll match that dollar for dollar. If you contribute 4%, Tejas Equipment will match 3.5%. And then if you do 5% or more of your pay, they will do a 4% match with each and every pay period. Additionally, the employer match is immediately vested for you. So if you don't have to be employed a certain number of years to be able to take that with you should you leave and go to another employer. If you choose to make it stay enrolled or want to increase your contribution rate, when you go through that registration enrollment process, you'll essentially make 4 decisions. That first is how much you wish to contribute. So if you want to contribute something other than the 1%, you can increase that percentage or you can change it to a flat dollar amount if you prefer. The automatic enrollment will be pre-tax. You also have the ability to make Roth after-tax contributions. And on the next slide, we'll talk about the difference between the two. You will make an investment selection or it'll be defaulted and one will be made for you. And then lastly, you'll make a beneficiary designation as well, just like a life insurance policy. We think about the difference between pre-tax and Roth. Pre-tax contributions tend to make the most sense if you're closer to retirement or you're owing the IRS each and every year when you file your taxes. Pre-tax contributions, when you make the contribution, you receive a deduction for the amount that you contributed, and then it's taxable when you take a withdrawal in retirement. As an example, say your W-2 normally reads 50,000, you contribute 2,000. It's going to look like to the IRS that you only made 48,000. So that $2,000 that you contributed reduces your income today. You make that contribution, it grows tax deferred, so you don't pay any taxes on any of the growth until you go to take an actual withdrawal from your plan. As long as that withdrawal is after age 59 and a half, it's whatever your income tax bracket is at that time. You take a withdrawal before 59 and a half, the IRS adds on an additional 10% penalty above and beyond your income tax rate at that time. So again, pre-tax tends to make the most sense. If you're closer to retirement, I would say 10 years or less, or if you are owing the IRS each year. If you're in a refund status when you file your taxes and you have more than 10 years until retirement, I would highly consider Roth after tax. It works essentially the opposite as pre-tax. Same 50,000 on your W-2, you contribute $2,000, you actually get taxed on the full 50,000 today. But what you've contributed plus all of the growth, you're able to take out income tax free as long as it's after that age 59 and a half. So it's really powerful to have that be income tax free for you in the future, especially if you do not need the income tax deduction today because you're already receiving a refund. If we think about the tax deferred growth benefits inside of a retirement plan, this looks at a couple different examples. Both investing $150 per month, growing at 8%. The bottom, the lighter blue at the bottom is inside of a taxable investment account, so not a 401k plan. Any interest and dividends that are generated, it assumes that you have to pay tax on those and that tax that is due comes out of the account. So the 150 a month over 30 years turns into about 145,000 inside of the 401k plan. The darker blue or the upper number, that same interest and dividends are still generated, but you do not have to pay tax on them in that year. So instead, it gets reinvested into your account. It buys more shares for you. And you can see the longer it's in there, the bigger that difference becomes each and every year because it just continues to grow and compound upon itself. So in that case, the 150 per month ends up to being about 225,000. If you were making pre-tax contributions, that would be taxable when you go to take withdrawals in retirement. Most people they do not take the whole account out all at once. They do smaller withdrawals, say 10, 15, 20,000 per year. You're only taxed on the amount that you actually withdraw. And then if you were making Roth after tax contributions, that 225 would be income tax free to you, and you could withdraw any amount at any time that you chose. We think about the investment options in the plan. There are 4 different ways to invest. The first is Transamerica Stable Value. It is a fixed account. It earns you about 2% per year. It cannot lose money. The younger you are, the less sense this probably makes. But if you want some portion of your account that is not tied to stocks or bonds and has some level of stability, that would be the option for you. The target date funds are the default in the plan. And on the next slide, we'll look and talk about how those are built and constructed. But they are age-based. So it's based on your year of birth plus 65, and then it's the 5-year increment closest to that. So as an example, if you were born in 1990, you would default into the 2055 fund in that case. The target date funds tend to be more aggressive when you're younger, and they get more conservative as you get closer to retirement. There are also some balanced funds from Vanguard and American funds. These also are a combination of stock and bond, but they do not change as you get closer to retirement. And then lastly, there's 19 additional mutual funds if you want to build something for yourself, everything from conservative to more aggressive. So if we think about the default investment options, they are the BlackRock target date funds. They are made up of both stock and bond. What you see there on the right shows you kind of the stock exposure over time and the bonds. So the blue is the stock exposure. Green is a combination of that stable value fixed account and some bonds. Everything from age 35 and under or 35 and younger, it's almost all stock, no bond. And then from 35 to 65, you can see that the stock exposure or the blue portion reduces each and every year, usually by about 2% until it gets down to 40% stock, 60% bond at age 65 or retirement age. If we think about the difference between stocks and bonds, stocks give you the greatest ability for long-term growth, but they're also the most volatile. So they are positive 7.5 out of every 10 years or negative 2.5 out of every 10. A good year for stocks, you could earn 20%. A bad year, you could lose 20%. And a long-term average rate of return on stocks is about 8%. Bonds tend to be have a lot less upside, but a lot less downside as well. A good year for bonds, you could earn 5%. A bad year, you could lose 4%. Long-term average is about 3.5%. And bonds tend to be positive 8.5 out of every 10 years. That is the reason as you get closer to retirement, they reduce that stock exposure and increase the bond exposure. If we did have one of those really bad years in stocks, this way you're considerably less impacted by that at that time. The last decision is beneficiary designation. So even if you let the auto enrollment occur, it doesn't know who you want to name as beneficiary. So we still would want you to go in, register, and name your beneficiary. If you're married, it should be your spouse. If you're not married, you get to name anybody that you choose to. If you want to name a minor child, I try to discourage against that. I would say instead name who you would have as their guardian. If you name a minor child and you pass away before they reach age 18, in most cases, the courts come in to determine how the money gets invested and spent for the child, and then at 18, they receive anything that's left over. So usually none of those are what you actually want to have happen. And then as far as accessing your funds while still working, you have a couple different options. You can borrow against your account balance. So once you have a balance of $2,000, you can borrow up to half of that. Minimum loan is $1,000. Maximum loan is $50,000. The benefit to a 401k loan is you are borrowing your own money and paying the interest back to yourself. The negatives to a 401k loan, it does have an interest rate. And right now, because rates are higher, it's about 9.5%. It is 9.5%. So it's always 1% over prime rate. The amount that you borrow is no longer able to be invested. So if we think about a $10,000 balance, you borrow 5,000, you'd only have 5,000 that were still invested and had the ability to grow for you. Loans can be paid back over as long as 5 years, unless it is for your primary residence, and then that can be pushed out to 15 years. And then lastly, if you have an outstanding loan and you are no longer employed, that loan does have to be paid back in 30 to 90 days. If it's not, it becomes a distribution and it is taxable to you. And if you're under that age 59 and a half, they add on the 10% penalty. You also have the ability to do hardship withdrawals. So these are, some of these are taxable, some are not. But unlike the loan process, you do have to have proof to be able to show that you need it for one of these reasons before the money actually is able to be taken out of the account. For that reason and others, the fact that loans are not taxable unless you miss payments or leave the employer, loans tend to be the preferred method to be able to get access the funds while still working. And then lastly, if you have a balance from a previous employer, an old 401k plan, if you want to roll that over, you can either do that by contacting me or reaching directly out to Transamerica, whichever you prefer. Again, my name is Brad Hughes. Thank you very much for learning about your plan, and you will have my contact information should we need to discuss anything. Thank you.